Welcome to episode 165 of the CUInsight Experience. I'm Randy Smith, one of the co-founders of CUInsight.com, and this show is all about taking a deep dive with the leaders of the credit union movement that make it so great. This episode is brought to you by our friends at PSCU, the nation's premier payments CUSO and an integrated financial technology solutions provider. Visit PSCU.com and learn more and discover PSCU TV, a new thought leadership platform hosted by PSCU's Chief Growth Officer and an all-around great guy and friend of mine, Brian Scott. Each episode, he explores top-of-mind insights in the credit union industry. I've watched a few, and they're great. Check them out. Today, I get to have a conversation with Lisa Pesta. Lisa is the president and CEO of Meriwest Credit Union out in California. So let's jump right in. Lisa, thank you so much for being here today. I was really excited about this conversation.
Thank you, Randy. I appreciate you inviting me on your show.
I think this is going to be fun. We were talking a little bit before we hit record, so I think we share maybe similar attitudes and outlooks and stuff like that. So I think we're going to have a blast here today. But I'd love to just jump right in. A little bit of background on you. Where did the career start for those of us who don't know you well? And how did that lead you to credit unions and where you are today as the CEO? I mean, most of us didn't grow up going, someday I want to work for credit unions.
Well, so yeah, very interesting story. And that kind of fits with what I'm going to say. So I was working for a law firm, and one of the clients approached me and said, one of the partners had referred me, and would I be willing to come work in his startup? So I was like, why not? So at the law firm, I was kind of working in the business service department, which handles HR, which was then called personnel, and other tasks for the law firm. So I went to go work for the startup. I loved it. I spent 13 years there. We went public. We went international. I started off as the girl who walked in with, what are you going to do for a job, to, oh, you're the new HR person with my, 5 minutes of HR experience. And then he allowed me to learn and grow. Ultimately, I was named the vice president of HR, international for the entire company. I was the second female vice president and the youngest vice president for this company. And it was a startup, so you would expect some of that. So after I left there, I went to another startup that had actually grown a little faster, and that was wonderful, but I was traveling a lot. So I put out my resume just to say, I had young kids at home. I don't know that I can continue this travel, right? So put out my resume. I got called from a bank, and I'm like, oh, that does not sound fun. I've been at these fun startups where we're growing and we're going public, and what's fun about a bank? So I passed. Then I'm still at this company. Another opportunity comes to me, another bank. And so I said, okay, why are these banks knocking on my door? I probably should at least attend this interview. It's the second one, right? What are the odds? So I'm waiting. It's the day of the interview. It's 1:00. I still don't know what bank I'm going to. And as an HR person, the last thing you want to do is walk into an interview. I don't know your company. I don't know anything about you. And remember, this was 23 years ago. I don't have all this information at my fingertips. I needed to do some research, right? So the recruiter calls me about 1:00. He says, so sorry, my interview was at 4:00. You're going to go to Meriwest Credit Union in San Jose. And I said, you are so lucky that not only am I a member there, but I'm a SEG. Now, for those of you who don't know what a SEG is, it's a select employer group. And so I had already partnered with Meriwest, and I'll get to that in a minute. I'd already partnered with Meriwest to bring them in to attract the employees in my company. And I had been a SEG for many years. So I walked in with at least a confidence of understanding who Meriwest was, how we changed our name, because we were originally Pacific IBM Credit Union, why we changed our name, how we changed our name. And I joined Meriwest Credit Union in the year 2000 at the end as the Vice President of Human Resources. I had a wonderful CEO, Chris Owen, who believed in cross-training his senior staff to other departments. So he started tasking me with learning about this department and learning about this department. When he retired and Julie Kirsch, who's one of my greatest mentors, became our CEO, she kept up the same mantra. take this department, take this department. So at some point, I was now running and learning about all the different departments in our credit union. From there, I then got promoted to Chief Human Resources Officer, along with Operational Officer, and then at some point became the COO. And that's really kind of what led me to be ready for the experience of becoming the CEO. So I came up in a different path than a lot of CEOs in the credit union industry, coming up as CFOs or COOs, where I actually started my roots in HR.
You know what's interesting is it feels to me like we're seeing more people take the non-financial path and finally getting a look for CEOs, right? Whether it's the people side of the business or the marketing side. I think it's a good thing to blend that in. You mentioned fairly new. I have so many questions right now, even about your background. This is top of mind for me, though. Being fairly new, for that person who was you, let's just say of last year, and maybe you're considering or you want to advance your career, you're looking at CEO roles, maybe yours happen to be internal. What advice do you have for the Lisa from a year ago who's out there today listening and would like to be in that chair someday?
You know what? I think being open to taking on anything that doesn't feel like, don't have the that's not my job attitude. Literally involve yourself in everything. And I was just excited and open that I had a CEO who wanted me to be, learning that way, but be that person who's in a constant state of learning. Be that person who really wants to experience new things. Because even if it doesn't lead to a CEO position, how much more rewarding will your career be if you're just open to learning new things in different departments and just being a more value add to your company, in this case, our credit union. So
that sounds pretty amazing, having two CEOs that you worked under that both had that kind of the growth mindset internally, right? Is that something, or how do you plan on continuing that forward, paying that forward now that you're in charge?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Actually, I'm building my team right now, as you could imagine, and already looking to give opportunity, looking to grow people, let them have a stronger voice, a louder voice. And that's another thing I want to add. One of the things that could have held me back ultimately didn't, but my board did an external search. So I was just not a shoo-in. They did an external search, and my voice at the board level was not loud enough. They heard me, those who knew me really well, because I worked with them on different, but because out of respect or out of just the way we designed it, I stayed quieter unless I was presenting at a board meeting. And so there were some board members who really didn't know me, who were newer, who didn't know what my contribution was to the credit union, the role, how I had rolled up, and how much knowledge and experience I really did have. So in a way, it was exciting to go in there and kind of show them what I have been working on with Meriwest Credit Union, and have them also reward me with trusting me enough with this opportunity to become their new CEO. So
you make a great point there. And it's something that, as I've had friends in the industry, come up and become CEOs. I'm thinking of a conversation I had a few years ago with one in particular where she said, she was at an SVP level, had dealt with the board to present to the board and things like that. But in her first few months, she was like, I didn't realize how much my CEO shielded me from the day to day of that board interaction.
Yes,
right?
Yes. That's a good point. Mm-hmm.
And I've heard that mentioned so many times by new CEOs. Any tips on that for, I guess, to get more board on interaction, or to truly, if you've not been a CEO before, to try to understand what that relationship is like?
I think what I've been trying to do is I have been bringing more, from at least from a knowledge and perspective, inviting more of my senior staff to participate during the board meeting. So, hey, would you talk about this? Would you do this? So they can hear their expertise and hear their knowledge and ask their questions, and really trying to engage them more. I've also, set up some teams where they're working on projects, and I'm like, reach out to these board members to get some feedback. So I'm really trying to kind of not be the only person. I'm not trying to be that funnel where they just come through me. I'm really trying to open it up. And I know that CEOs, I've been meeting some new CEOs, and I'm hearing like, are you sure you want to do that? Be careful. But this is my nature to who I am. I'm very collaborative, very inclusive. So I guess until it bites me and proves me wrong, I'm going to continue down this path. Sorry for that very professional term.
Hey, I love it.
Until it backfires on me. Yes, until it backfires on me, this is the path I want to continue going down.
Absolutely. You have to be you, right? Just quickly, let's talk credit unions. What has you... I'm going to go with the negative first. What are the challenges we're facing? But I really like to focus on the positive. So, I mean, what do you see as the biggest challenges that we're facing in credit unions today? And I will say, just out of location, you're right in the center of a lot of the disruption that's happening out with a lot of the tech companies getting into banking and the such. So what challenges are we facing that you think we can't turn a blind eye to it?
I think that the fact that our industry continues to decline in numbers, I think is important. We need to pay attention to. I think that, and again, I'm going to probably start to turn on some of the strengths also, because that's what I do. I think we need to take this opportunity with the bank failures and with the two that are in my backyard, SVB and, First Republic. One was very similar to our model, and Silicon Valley Bank was obviously a very different model than a local credit union. But we really need to take this opportunity to market to our members, to market to our communities about who we are, because credit unions are a great alternative to fintechs. I mean, we are already, and now I'm kind of moving into the forward thinking, we're already got the exceptional customer service. So what are we doing? We're now making sure that we have innovative technology so that our customers and the next generation of customers find us relevant. We've always had this, the name alone, credit union, sends a message of exclusivity, of unions, of joining. And so how do we make sure they know that we're open, that we're here to serve them? And that's something member satisfaction credit unions have always scored very highly of. But we need to focus on the loyalty and the long-term growth and retention strategies. And years ago, our former CEO, Julie, put in relationship pricing. And we've continued to modernize that and make sure it's relevant for our members. So those things we need, one thing that's so great about credit unions is we're collaborative. So let's work together and fight this battle together. And I know that the trade associations have been working on this, but we need to continue to work together. There's a lot of credit unions in my neighborhood. I can go down a shopping center a mile away and there's 2 credit unions in the same shopping center, which surprises me how that was allowed to happen, but there are. And we need to continue to work together. So those are some of our challenges and how we turn them around and really make credit unions successful for this.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. Let me ask this question. It's something that's kind of been on my mind, and it comes from, the collaboration side of thing. I couldn't agree with you more when it comes to collaboration. I've heard you mentioned the 2 credit unions down the street from you. I've heard often with, smaller credit unions talk about almost a fear of collaboration, because if they get too close to a bigger credit union, then the bigger credit union tries to acquire them and they don't want to lose their independence. Right?
Of course we are. Of course. Absolutely.
So how do we work through that? Can you fix this for us, Lisa?
Yeah, I think what it is if the smaller credit unions can band together and create technologies that continue to make them relevant, I think that would be a good path. I think what happens to smaller credit unions is they don't have the deeper pockets to be innovative, to put in those technologies that really are going to drive the next generation. And I think that's why. But I've worked with a number of smaller credit unions, especially through my work at the HRD network, and they're very innovative and engaging. It's just whether or not they have the financial backing to do some of the things that they want to do. So if they could find a way to band together, then they don't have to worry about the bigger credit unions. But yes, we're all looking for that growth, right? Yeah. And we want organic growth and maybe we want merger growth too.
Yeah, absolutely. They're both important strategies, right?
And how best to serve our members. And that should be the first question asked.
I'd like to pivot a little bit here and talk about your path to that CEO chair. As far as mentors go, have you had traditional mentors or, mentors that have helped you along the way? And what does your network look like? Who does Lisa bounce things off of?
That's a good question, Randy.
Thank you.
I have been so blessed with a number of mentors, starting with my parents. I had in my first startup, I had the mentor, the CEO was a great mentor of mine, and one of my best champions who told me at a very young age, I think it was 24, that you could do or anything you want to be in this life. You just set your mind to it. Now, I've always wanted to be a singer, and that's probably never going to happen, but from a business perspective, he's the one who gave me the confidence at a young age to really continue to learn and grow and think differently. And he was, Chris Owen, who I mentioned, was a former CEO of Meriwest. Julie Kirsch is one of my mentors. I have mentors out within the industry. Diana Dykstra has been one of my mentors from the CCOL. I really look to those people. I also, I have some really wonderful friendships of very smart, hardworking women that I go to for ideas and questions, even though they're in completely different industries, really kind of tapping into that. So I feel like I've been blessed with mentors all around me my whole life. And it's just a matter of whether or not I go to them or I take the time to ask them questions.
Do you have that person who, if will shoot it to you straight no matter what? I think back in my career, people
absolutely.
who I know that if I call them, they'll be like, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. And I can be like, why? But do you have those people?
Yeah, actually every single one of those people that I just listed, I could come to, and they will not fluff with me. They will not tell me what I want to hear. They will tell me yes. And that's what you need in a mentor. If everyone's going to be saying yes to you all the time, you're the best, you're amazing, well, then I'm never going to learn and grow, and I'm just going to think I'm amazing, right?
I couldn't agree with you more. When you think back on your career, and this is a question I added this year after I heard it on a podcast and absolutely loved it, but can you think of an investment that you made in your career that just has been invaluable, right? Like you wouldn't be where you are today. And the example I always give is when asked of Warren Buffett, he said it was Dale Carnegie courses. So is there something for you?
Well, I did read, my very first business book that I ever read was How to Win Friends and Influence People. So,
right?
I would say that, my greatest investment is my willingness and desire to consistently and constantly and continuously learn. And I would also say for me, and this is my own accomplishment, but getting my college degree was important to me as a person. I think that helped me build confidence and, really just investing the time. I'll read anything that comes in front of me. I love to read books and I love to read articles, and I try to absorb information that way. So I really do spend the time investing in those things that I think will help me build my career from now until, I can't imagine what life is when I'm not working, because I will be doing something like that.
Curiosity never goes away, right? So, so you mentioned earlier about building out your leadership team, and that's something I like to talk a lot about. Culture is always a big topic around credit unions, but if we take that back even more to the beginning, is there something that you're looking for in the folks that you surround yourself with when, say, filling out your leadership team? And on the flip side of that, is there something that when you hear it, you're like, oh, nope, they're not here. This is not their place. Good luck someplace else.
I'm going to start with that part of the question, and then I'll move to the other side. So if I'm conducting an interview, obviously you're there to sell yourself. And I expect you to say, I developed this, I implemented this, and I do expect to hear that. But if nowhere in the conversation there's ever a we, or nowhere in the conversation is there credit given to the team, because I know that you did not do all that work yourself, right? You may have been the brainchild behind it, might have been your vision, but you were not the only one who implemented it. And if someone during an interview has too many eyes, they're probably not the person I'm going to surround myself with.
So who are you looking for?
So what I am looking for is I'm really looking for someone who's not afraid to speak up. I want someone who thinks and is willing to share, willing to teach, if I don't want groupthink is where I'm coming. I don't want to don't just agree with me, because that's not going to move us forward. If I'm the smartest one in the room, then I don't need anybody else. And I am not the smartest one in the room. So I need everybody else. And I really want someone who really just wants to come in and have a voice. I'll just end it with that. Someone who has a voice and is willing to use it.
So we often hear that leaders talk about, it's kind of an older term, but like that open door policy. They want people to be able to speak up and bring things to them. And yet we've probably all worked in organizations where that wasn't, even if that was said, that wasn't like, there was no follow through on that, right? Like where it was like, oh, my idea got shut down again. How do you create that culture that your team feels comfortable saying, Lisa, we think we have to do this, or think this is a bad idea? In the end of the day, you have to make the final call, right? But like, how do you allow people to feel safe in that space to be able to, whether it's push back or bring ideas to the table?
Well, I'm not going to say I have meetings for meeting's sake, but when we're talking about a topic, I bring more people to the table so that people can kind of hear. And sometimes you're right, they don't speak up during the meeting, but maybe they'll email later, like, have you thought about this? Right. And I think what I've done is, and I have a perfect example. I had one of my employees come to me and said, what do you think about this product line? And I said, okay, I'm open-minded to hearing about it. Why don't you do the research and bring it to us and we'll look at it. So we had a meeting and the meeting went terrible. And immediately I'm like, no, we're not doing that. Right. I'm already like, no. She comes to me and she goes, you probably want to say no, right? And I said, yes, I do. And she said, will you give me one more chance? That was a terrible meeting. And I think I know a better direction to get you to evaluate this more successfully. And I said, yes. So I feel like that's a good example of saying I have an open door. I could have shut it down, but they asked for another moment, one more meeting. And I said yes to that. And they know I'm open-minded to it. So I think it's not just saying it, but it's doing it. And then the actions that you show. You can talk all day long, but if you don't back that up with actions, people aren't going to believe you. And that's all I can do is keep showing. And, I tell people in the room, this is a room where you get to speak your mind. But when we walk out of here, we have to be in agreement of the direction, whether it was your idea or not, or you don't like it. You've had a chance to speak up. And if you choose not to speak up, that's on you, because I'm still going to expect you to own the idea, whatever we're working on. So that's all I can do. Words with action.
Absolutely. That's good stuff there. That's such an interesting thing, because I was trying to think if that, in a way, it was leading into the next question that I wanted to ask you is, you have your team. The interesting thing about the story you just told is the person kind of self-corrected. The woman who was in your office did. So, but if, she was like, wait, nope, I botched that. Can I have another shot? But how do you give feedback, I guess, would be my question. Not everything is always right. I mean, just as a leader, there are going to be times where people make a mistake, disappoint, whatever it happens to be. What's your, I guess, style as far as feedback goes? And if you have an example there.
I don't know that I can think of an example out the gate, but maybe as I develop this thought process, I will. So I have regular one-on-ones so that I have that opportunity, and I give feedback immediately. If I leave a meeting and I feel that something was wasn't appropriate, didn't make the person, whatever, right? I will call that person in right away. And just say, the tone, what was with the tone? What was behind that? Because it, made the whole room feel off base. And I'm trying to understand there's a conflict here. Like, let's address it. And I think people know that I am willing to have those conversations fast and furious. And I don't allow, I might sleep on something. Like, was it me? Did I just take this wrong? But I'm an immediate feedback giver. And then I have regular meetings to make sure that if we're just so busy that I do have time to focus on what that employee is working on and what feedback I have and what direction I might have. And so I don't know a time, I think you used the word disappointed, that I've been disappointed. I'm sure there's 100 cases I could come up with, someone who doesn't think my idea is the best. And then I'm disappointed they don't think it's the best.
Right. That's hey, I know that one. So.
Yeah.
There was a question that I wanted to kind of circle back to that I was thinking about when you mentioned the Dale Carnegie book that we all read. To me, it feels like we all kind of grew up reading many of the same leadership books and things of that nature. And yet over time, what our great CEOs look like has kind of changed. It's not the same as what it was, 20, 30, 40 years ago. What do you think today makes a good leader or a good CEO in general?
Well, luckily, I've just had a reason to come up with these ideas. The fact that I just went through the interview process. I think that a good CEO/leader, needs to have a clear vision for the company, and they need to be able to align, inspire others, to that vision. And I think that's important. Strong decision making, as you pointed out a few minutes ago. Ultimately, get the feedback you want, but I do have to make the decision. Good communication. And I've been, luckily, coming from the HR world, communication's been my entire life. So I feel that I'm good at it. And the minute you can never communicate enough. So if you think you've sent an email, you have to continue to communicate, because people only hear certain ways. They only hear at certain times. They don't read. So I know that good communication is important, and if you think you did enough, you need to do one more step. I think emotional intelligence is important. I think you need to be empathetic. You need to learn to work with people. You need to understand. You need to listen. I talked about giving them a voice. I'm a big collaborator. I'm a big team builder, and I look to build people. I believe in lifting people up. And there is a Zig Ziglar quote from years ago that is not with me right at this moment, but it says, "You lift many people up. You are lifted by lifting others up." And I'm a big believer in that. I recently had someone that I just ran into, and he is not working for us, but he said his entire career is because of a conversation he had with me years ago. And the fact that I gave him the opportunity to pursue that career, and now it's his livelihood. And he thanked me. Like, I ran into him at a conference and he thanked me. And so it's that feedback that fuels me, that says, okay, I can do this, right? I've got someone who thinks this way, and this has been 10 years since he's worked for us. Ethics, you've got to be an ethical leader. And ultimately, you need to learn to adapt, innovate, or perish.
Right.
Those are what I think are important.
So let me ask you that. Obviously, the credit union's been around for a long time. How do you keep moving forward? Like, how do you, I guess, get out of that mindset of like, well, here's how we've always done it?
When I first joined Meriwest, there was a lot of, that's how we've always done it. Because I came in from a startup, and when you're in a startup, you're always thinking, how can we do this, and how can we do this better, and how can we be more efficient? And so when I came into Meriwest, I did hear a lot of, that's how we've always done it. We also had just changed our name about 2 years before I joined. And I said, you know what? This is a 40-year-old startup. I mean, we are rebranding ourselves. When we're out there, looking at, we're now community as opposed to a single sponsor with IBM. Like, this is an opportunity for us to think like a startup. And I will tell you, and I know this, I give credit to Chris and Julie also on this. They just didn't allow that to happen. They just kept pushing back. And Julie was brilliant at this, where she would just keep asking and asking and asking why, or what. And I do copy that from her, because asking questions is the best way to get to a really good resolution. And today, if that comes out of someone's mouth, you immediately hear them go, but that does not mean we need to do it that way going forward. And I will tell you, I feel like Meriwest, and I'm sure other credit union leaders are going to say this, but we have the best team. We have the best set of employees. They are so hardworking, so incredibly smart. And I cannot imagine running this credit union without them. And they're very innovative in their own way. The innovation that comes through Meriwest is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And we just don't hear, that's how we've always done it anymore.
Oh, I love that. Another scratch my own itch question. What have you brought? I mean, the idea that professionally you came up through the startup world, right? Working for a couple different startups before you moved into your credit union career. Is there either something you brought from that experience or, something that maybe has helped define even your credit union career?
I will say there are a couple things that I brought. And this is with the we.
Yep,
So
yep.
I was hired to create the culture at Meriwest, which we call the Meriwest way. And that's what the main reason they hired me is the culture that I had built at particularly one of the startups. And they believed in me to build that. They supported me. And with the employees, we really have been working to redefine that culture. And I think that that's probably my biggest, what I would say that I have brought. I started, people did not like the HR department. They feared it. So I immediately did small things like put candy on our reception desk because people are willing to walk in to get candy, right? So it's little things, but it made you more approachable. So when they walk in, we'd engage them in conversation. So then they were like, oh, those are nice people in that room, So we've been working on it. We just won Best Places to Work 4 years in a row. We had actually won prior to the financial crisis, which I don't even want to talk about. But then we just didn't apply for a number of years as we went through that, just, working on many other things. And so our employees tell us we're the best place to work. Our employees tell us that our culture is great. And I know that I was spearhead of that culture, evolution. So that's one of the things I brought. I also brought, look at our business processes. That was something we also did in our startup. Like you do things so manually. And when you're growing quickly, you have to figure out how to become efficient. And so one of the things that I've always questioned and I continue to question as a COO, and I especially continue to question as a CEO, let's not make it hard to do business with us. Let's streamline those things that we can. We've created workflows where to me, it's kind of a key business process. You look at the flow of it and you remove those barriers to do business. Now we are a long way. We will never be perfect at that because the minute you fix something, technology changes, something else changes, and you're constantly in that flow. But I feel like, and it probably existed before me, but I definitely brought that attitude to the credit union on let's make it easy to do business with us.
Let me ask you this, and I feel like you're uniquely qualified to answer this question, so I'm really interested to hear your answer. Like the idea of whether it was remote work or, what it meant to work at a credit union, to me feels like it changed drastically over the last few years. There were many financial institutions that were like, you could never work from home. So if you look forward, again, you're right in that, the technology's all around you. What does a career in credit unions look like in the future? If somebody was, say, going to graduate from college in the next few years and starting their first career?
There's no question. I think we are in a forever hybrid mode. Obviously, there's some positions in a credit union that can never work remote. I apologize for that. I think one of the things Meriwest did probably about, my goodness, I want to say maybe 15 years ago, we actually had one of our superstar employees who wanted to move out of the area. And we were able to set it up so she could. Had a lot of success with that. And that allowed us then to add a few more employees so we've been doing remote work at a very limited level before COVID hit. And I think that so we were already hybrid. We had put in some silly rules like, oh, if you're hybrid, if you work remote, you can't be a manager because you're not here to manage people, right? Well, we threw that out the window many years ago because the employees were already doing such a good job. They were managing projects. We're like, now, why did we put that barrier on them? That got removed. So now you can be a manager. You can be, successful and work remote. So that has gone out the window. Now, there's some positions that, like as we just talked about with the FSRs and the tellers, that won't be remote. And there's some people that just can't work remote. It doesn't matter the position. There are some people who just do not have that self-discipline. And I'm not looking to set them up for failure. So maybe that's why I say a hybrid model. Maybe they're in office. As much as we think this position could work remote, it just doesn't work for you.
I tend to agree with you. That's for sure. I think it's going to be so interesting to see what credit unions and financial services in general look like over the next few years. It seems like everything is moving quick.
I'm excited.
It is exciting,
this is
right?
exciting.
Like, as someone who loves change, it's exciting for me. I don't know. So was there anything that you were hoping I was going to ask you or that you'd like to talk about before we move on to have a little fun with my rapid fire questions?
No, I don't think so. I feel like we've kind of touched on everything. As your rapid fire, if I think there's something I want to add in, I'll just throw it in.
And I'll give you another opportunity before we go. If one pops up.
Good.
So it wouldn't be the CUInsight Experience without them. So these are rapid fire questions. Rapid from me. You take as long as you want to answer them. There's no time limit on that. What was the very first job you ever had? That first paying gig, high school job, whatever it might have been.
I worked at a plant nursery that was across the street from my high school, and I was hired to work to decorate Christmas trees. So they were even ahead of their time, bringing in Christmas ornaments and selling them. I loved that job. They hired me on part-time, but permanent, whatever you want to call it, right? And so I worked there for a few years, just 2 days a week and weekends, and I just had the best time. I've actually loved every one of my jobs. Careful,
That's awesome.
I'll go down that rabbit hole with you.
Oh, hey, I love that. When was the last time, either personally or professionally, you were amazed?
Okay. So professionally, really when the board trusted me enough to hire me as their CEO, the fact that they believed in me really, and that's amazement in a positive way, not like, oh, I'm so amazed, right? Like I just feel in awe and gratitude. Personally, is probably the day I realized that all 4 of my kids are independent, launched. That says a lot for a family.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. So that's my personal side there.
That's amazing. That is fantastic. Is there anything that you're currently working on yourself? What's taking up that personal growth space?
I think I have a fire hose in my face right now, Randy. Will you ask me that question next year when we meet again?
Well, then I'm going to hold you to it that you better have made some room for it. I understand that you probably have some tunnel vision, but at some point,
yes.
Take a breath.
Definitely.
Make some Lisa room.
I will.
So this kind of plays into that. I found in myself and, when I've talked to other people that were leading or building organizations that it at times consumes us, right? Like the fire hose right now. You just mentioned your family. You've got 4 successful kids that you've launched out into this world. I love that word, by the way. Do you have any hacks or something that you've leaned on along the way to create some of that balance in life? We can't just always work all the time.
Well, I'm going to tell you what my story is, and my husband will tell you I've not yet achieved this.
I love that.
He does not get enough. He does not get enough of my time. And I think I get my energy from my friends and my family. I spend time with my parents, my sister, her family, our kids. And I have a lot of friends in our community. We love to go, to wine tasting. We love to go to music in the park, and and I really find that I fuel and I get re-energized to face the next week by spending time, with, and that includes my husband. He gets to participate. So.
He can come too.
But I do. Yeah. So I just love to spend time with people. I'm very much a people person, and I refuel myself. That's what I've been doing for now. I try to work out. And that's a stop and start process. I do really good, and then I don't, and then I do really good. So, and I just recently downloaded the Calm app. I try to do a little meditation every morning. So I'm only a couple days in, but it's good. I find myself relaxed for about 45 seconds. And so I'm working on that.
You're working your way up. I use the Insight Timer app from the first time Leo Ardeen was on the podcast, the first season he recommended.
Perfect.
It. So,
okay, I'll have to look that one up. Yes.
If Calm isn't working for you, it's a good one. It has a bunch of different classes, but I think they're all great, actually. So what's the best piece of advice you ever received? And do you remember who gave it to you?
Yeah. And actually, I already gave it to you. Oh. My first CEO, when he sat down in my early 20s, and he was the first person who said, during, like, it was a performance review or something that he was giving me. And he was like, you are one of those people who can set a goal in life and achieve it. So you figure out what you want to do and you go for it. And that was probably my best advice, giving away, not including what my parents may have said, throughout my years, but this was independent, not someone who loved me like my parents.
Right. No, that's fantastic. What's the greatest album of all time? That one you can listen to from front to back.
Okay. So I actually am a country girl right now, but my favorite album of all times that I could listen to over and over is Journey Escape. I was a Journey groupie in the 80s. I've just aged myself. I love all songs by Journey. I know all the words to all songs by Journey. It's probably the only band I could pick out of a lineup. Then I might go back to the 70s and do the Carpenters. Like, I don't know. But Journey.
That's the Journey. I love it. That's fantastic. So this is a question that I added this year at the suggestion of NCOA Chairman Harper. It's not about compliance. Who plays you in the movie or biopic of your life?
Oh, man, this is a good question. Okay, I'm going to say Reese Witherspoon.
Oh, awesome. That's fantastic. She's got her own book club now and everything, too. I mean, she's doing it all.
And I follow her book club. I'm in a book club. Yeah.
It's amazing. Are you currently reading anything, or do you have that book that you think everybody should read?
Okay, so let's start with the book that I think everybody should read. It is a book called Lead Right, Every Leader's Straight Talk Guide to Job Success. And it's written by Steve Ventura. I am coaching a manager right now, and I asked them to start reading this book. So I started reading it again. Now I've read it a few times. Every time I read it, I feel like it's got new information. It speaks to me differently. It is probably let me see how many pages it has, because it's like 60 something pages. And the words are big, and anyone could read this in probably 45 minutes. It'll take you longer if you're highlighting or if you're making notes, but it really is an easy read. It's not a business book that maybe, that you have to listen to, which I do listen to while I'm driving books. But this is one that's easy that I have all our managers read, and it really talks about the difference between a manager and a leader. And I just very much love this book. I highly recommend it. I'm reading The Speed of Trust right now. I'm listening to it because I am building a new team, and I want to make sure that I develop those trust strategies with them. And then I'm in a book club, so you can call me next month. I'll be on a new book and a new book and a new book. So I love to read, and I love my book club. So
oh, that's awesome. When you hear the word success, who's the first person that comes to mind, and why?
My dad.
Ah, awesome. Dad gets a shout out.
He does. He really does. And you know why? He grew up so poor at one point that they did not have running water or electricity. Then at some point they moved to town and they got that. It came to California in the early 50s, and he was a carpenter. He got married to my mom when he was 19, and he was not afraid. He was from a carpenter, he went to be a truck driver for Shell Oil. Then he got into the semiconductor industry, which is really where he kind of took his career. He wasn't afraid of taking job risk. And to me, that's success, is you're willing to take job risk as they present themselves in front of you. And he said there's some things that he's grateful in the risk that he didn't take, and there's some risks that he said, I still wonder where that might have taken me. He ended up owning his own company at some point. He didn't retire till he was 77. He would wishes that he still works today. He's not sure why he retired at 77. And to me, that's success, great success that you look back on your career. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that is a great answer, and people can't see, but put a huge smile on my face. So last question. Do you have any final thoughts you would like to share, or any asks of our listeners today?
I think that my final thoughts, I don't know if it's an ask, but if they're not feeling this way, maybe it's an ask, but our industry we should be filled with passion for our industry. It is a wonderful industry. We didn't talk about this, Randy, but the amount of community involvement that Meriwest has and many credit unions have. We don't just make donations and put our name on a sign. We are literally out there, walk a mile in her shoes, doing all of those things that we participate. Our staff is amazing. And I would think that just shows the passion. So my ask is that every credit union leader have passion for your credit union, have passion for our industry.
That is the perfect way to wrap this up. That is it. Thank you so much for being on the show, Lisa. I guess I have one last question for you. If people want to get a hold of you, what's your poison? LinkedIn, email? How can people reach out?
LinkedIn, but I'm in a really busy time right now. I get there as often as I can. Pesta at Meriwest.com. I'll get that a lot faster, but either one of those two poisons, they can reach me. And maybe reference that it was from this podcast, only because I get so many emails a day. Yes.
Well, we will link to that in the show notes as well. Thank you again for being here today, Lisa. I greatly appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun.
Randy, you're the best. Thank you for making me feel calm through this. I enjoyed our podcast today.
You made it easy. A few things before we go. Make sure to check out PSCU and be sure to learn more about PSCU TV. They are a longtime partner of CUInsight.com and the podcast, and I am grateful for their support to allow me to have this much fun doing what I do. And my guess is Brian Scott over at PSCU is having a bunch of fun hosting PSCU TV as well. Also, please subscribe to the CUInsight Experience on your favorite podcast player. We are on them all. And if you're looking for book mentioned, like on today's show or from the past shows, you can do a quick Google of the CUInsight Experience podcast book list, and your next read is on its way from Amazon. Last but certainly not least, I want to thank all of you for listening. Y'all rock, and I appreciate all of you. Be well, friends.